So, I was originally planning, with Arlecchino's rerun banner here, to make a video about how relevant Arlecchino could be into next year, as well as how relevant she's been, since the current power balance of characters has been such that, we're really incentivized to play new characters over old characters in, endgame content at least, but there's also, structures in Overworld too that incentivize you to pull newer characters as well, right? Which you've probably experienced if you have had to fight this boss, for example, for Nefer. But in context of miHoYo announcing buffs for characters, older characters, right, in conjunction with Duran's release next patch, which I think is going to be a positive change for the game, right? But the reason, everyone's talking about these buffs and the reason we feel these buffs are so important is, again, because of like this aspect to how they have started balancing characters, and then very importantly balancing like enemy design and the endgame combat design heavily around trying to push you to have newer characters, right? In particular, it felt like there was a shift to me last year in how they balance things, right? And I think many people feel that way. You might not quite agree, and that's fine. But I thought this was a rare opportunity to talk about something that I think I'm pretty good at doing, which is trying to do my utmost to make characters usable in endgame when, they aren't exactly the ideal choice, right? Like, it's not the ideal choice to play DPS Lanyan. DPS Lanyan is not the strongest character in the game. She's not Moika. But still, she is more than capable enough. Although Lanyan is a character that is newer, so I guess Lanyan is part of the power creep too, but whatever. Just the vibe of, the balance of the game has gone in a direction where it is harder to just use the character you want to use because you like the character, right, in whatever form of content. It's becoming harder and harder to do that. But how usable are they? And this is a rare opportunity where I think a tier list actually makes sense. Now, a couple of things with this tier list. Lanyan is here because I just think she's a good example character and I like her. I am going to yap about, other characters, but I chose to just, put a youngins category. So that's anyone that was Natlan and after. Although actually, you know what? Let's take out Mizuki, because Mizuki is, she's a standard banner character who is, not the greatest. She's not useless, and I think she's actually becoming more and more usable over time. I don't want to talk super in-depth, right, but I'll try to give like some specific examples of team ideas for how I think they could make sense in, Abyss or Stygian. So my simple example to start with, even though Lanyan is technically a youngin, she's not a conventional DPS, so I'm comfortable putting her here. Now, if you follow my content, you might know that I used Lanyan in the previous Stygian Onslaught, and I cleared the Aeon Blight Drake. For anytime we're talking about Stygian, by the way, in this video, we're talking about Fearless difficulty. I'm not going to be talking about like dire difficulty. And Stygian is a game mode that has much more specific like boss mechanics that you have to deal with, which usually restricts the team options way more. And that is going to be part of how I evaluate certain characters' relevance here. Lanyan can reach the DPS check, but in conjunction with the enemy mechanics, functionally, she's not very usable Really, sir? So even if I technically have found some cases of using Lanyan in Stygian Onslaught, it's not, I wouldn't feel comfortable quite placing her there, but I do think I am comfortable placing her here. It's also worth mentioning that, from a generic shielder supportive context, obviously Lanyan, BV, Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayer is a good shield. For most people would be probably here, but she actually has the capability to very well be here. I'll probably have another DPS Lanyan video coming out soon. You could definitely make an argument that she'd be here instead, but I actually think she's better than that, but anyways. And then Hello Overworld, my old friend is the, sorry if Chi-Chi is your favorite character, but I think Chi-Chi is one of the harder characters to actually make work in endgame. Is it possible? Yes, but she's not necessarily contributing much to the team that feels like it's actually a Chi-Chi team for the vast majority of people. But if you want something insane, I'll link a video of this from Tars Wemo. He made Chi-Chi into a hyper carry, and this is clearing a Spiral Abyss cycle that many people had difficulties with this team. Like, the dude's bonkers. You shouldn't do hyper carry Chi-Chi, but it's technically doable. I think Chi-Chi, if you like her, be happy being able to use her as a nice comfort healer for Overworld. She has some value outside of that, but, hello Overworld, my old friend. Chi-Chi is the standard there. I don't actually think there's that many characters that belong there. Alright, so Mizuki. She's a weird one. One thing I want to mention here, by the way, is like, I don't know what characters you have. I am only going to try to evaluate on hypotheticals of what characters you could have if you wanted to, make a character like Mizuki work, right? I'm not going to assume, having C6 of 5 stars that would make her work, obviously. But just like, evaluating based on like team options for C0 5 stars, how usable is Mizuki? content available. I guess, you know what, I just realized Imaginarium Theater is a game mode, and some characters are actually a lot more valuable in Imaginarium Theater. The thing that's weird about adding a Imaginarium Theater tier is like Mizuki could be a great character for Imaginarium Theater, but Theater kind of overlaps with, I'd say, like this tier, and this tier to some extent, depending on the kind of character it is. So I'll just mention Theater if it pops to my head of the relevant context. And as far as Mizuki goes, the things you need to make her work, because the problem she has is that there's other good animo units in the game, Animo Catalyst in particular, you know, Sucrose exists, whatever. That's like the meta issue, is like, why would you play Mizuki over playing Sucrose? But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is you're playing Mizuki because you like some trait of Mizuki, like just the comfort. So what you want, though, for her teams is you want to pair her with off-fielders that are doing their damage, and you want to be able to swirl elements around, right? And it has to be off-fielders that don't require normal attacks, so like your Xingqius, your Yelan doesn't work. In some level, Mizuki could be said to be here, but I actually think she's here. But it's really just dependent on what your off-fielders are. Like, the effort you have to put into Mizuki is not really into Mizuki herself. It's into your off-fielders. And you have to, like, make decisions to pull off-fielders. Like, if you want Mizuki to be more usable, you really compellingly have a reason to go for Durin, for example. Like, that could work, right? Or actually, I mean, you know who's next on the list? Emily, right? You could do Durin Emily. And you could do Xiangling if you have enough energy on her, by the way. But Xiangling would just be a pain in the butt to build for her. You get the point, right? Like, I actually think it's not that hard to get Mizuki's teams in the current state of Genshin. And yes, we're talking about pulling a new character with her. So maybe that actually ranks her lower in the context of how usable she is. But I don't know. She's a weird one. I'm going to leave her here. Emily, I think she's an extremely capable Abyss unit. I think she's a very capable Stygian unit. Stygian is dependent on what kinds of, you know, units she's paired with, though. So does she quite exactly belong here? A lot of people think you have to just do full Dendro Pyro teams. You can't have any other elements interacting with the burning, otherwise that causes Emily to do no damage. You actually can. You don't have to have 100% burning uptime. You can do shenanigans with Burgeon. You can do shenanigans with Electro Overburn. That's all really fun. I think it's one of the really, really fun values of Emily. She's one of my favorite characters in the game because she made me realize how fun the idea of playing teams like that could be. But what I'm getting at here is I really do feel like some of those teams work much better with her signature weapon because it enables bursting on her much more reliably without sacrificing a bunch of damage like you would have to do without her signature weapon. And that means she's functionally a higher investment unit, and I'm not as comfortable ranking her higher, so I'm just going to throw her in Abyss capable. Sethos, my boy. So Sethos is a main DPS that, depending on how well you can play him, he's a complicated character, quite frankly. The nuance of Sethos is that he can use energy mechanics in different ways. You can do his level 2 charge shots, you can do his burst playstyle, you can do a mix of his level 2 charge shots and burst playstyle, or you can do burst playstyle and level 1 charge shots, and level 1 charge shots are actually where a lot of his min-max gameplay comes around. That's a super simplification. My boy is really fun and can be really strong. Is more dependent on your play. I think he actually kind of is Stygian capable, but realistically, I think for most players, let's just throw him here. The bar for Stygian is high enough that I don't think I'm going to comfortably put most characters there. Because I want to emphasize, by the way, because we're getting to Chlorine, for example. I'd say in this current Stygian, she is more Stygian capable than Sethos is, right? But that doesn't necessarily account for all Stygian onslaughts, and I'm not going to place one character in the Stygian capable category simply because they have one boss that is shilling for them, or partially shilling for them that they're ideal against. I would say Chlorine has actually been pretty usable in multiple Stygians for me, but I don't know. And realistically, I think I might be biased towards saying Chlorine is Stygian capable because I have C2 Frina. I didn't spend money for C2 Frina, but you know what? Because of that factor, I'm gonna leave her in Abyss capable. Sigewinne, oh boy. I think Sigewinne, I think Sigewinne is actually better than a lot of people give her credit for. But in the current context of the game, with how they're balancing healers like, let's say Escoffier, right, who is a healer, a res shredder, and a damage dealer all in one. So I actually think I'll put Sigewinne in capable, but takes effort. Like, even Abyss has become really restrictive, and I don't think Sigewinne Farina Core is as good as it used to be. So, like, I do think it's unfortunate. Like, not very long ago at all. If this was before Non-Cry, I actually would have leaned towards, I think, putting her here. Post Non-Cry, with them doing, like, Wild Hunt mechanics that functionally double the DPS you need, if you don't do 2 Non-Cry characters with those enemies, then, like, well, okay. And I don't know how often those enemies are going to show up in Abyss, but they've been in Abyss twice in a row already. But it's also not that hard to make her useful in some form, so I'm comfortable leaving her in the takes effort tier. Chiori. So, interesting story with Chiori. She kind of, crapped Albedo when she released. by being a better damage dealer than Albedo. And then Albedo's getting buffs next match, which functionally make him better than Chiori. I haven't used a buff Albedo yet, to be clear, but that seems to be what his numbers are looking like. With that said, she is an off-fielder. It's just that she's an off-fielder that doesn't have a lot of team context where she actually is reaching her full damage potential. You need a Geo construct at C0, and like if you want to use her with Navia, she's gonna be decent with Navia for sure. I know there's some people that are going to be a little bit upset at this, but I think she's in the capable but takes effort tier. I just think there's not enough context where you have Geo constructs available to reach her full damage potential, in conjunction with like how restrictive both Stygian and Abyss has been, such that I think it's a lot harder than it used to be to use Chiori. So I think she's better than Siege Wayne, to be clear. Not that I'm going to worry about the individual placement here. Mr. Gaming. So Gaming is not... He has the DPS potential in his best teams to potentially clear Stygian, except for he's kind of entirely screwed over by not starting with any energy. He is one of the victims, the mini victims, I'd say, where characters that, with effort could be compelling in Stygian Onslaught, and having a compelling pyro DPS is good for Stygian, and you can reach investment levels where he can be very compelling for Stygian, especially at Fearless difficulty. But boy, the energy causes some problems. Like, it really causes some problems. So I think for most people, I would say Abyss capable, but he's strong enough that I think I want to put him in Stygian capable, but I also don't have enough experience with him to strongly put him here. But I'm going to leave him here for now. You can feel free to jump to the comments and disagree with me, but I have been using a different burst reliant character that has a worse situation than him for Stygian in Stygian Onslaught lately, and we'll talk about her, don't worry. And she technically can be useful in Stygian in various levels, so I think Gaming deserves to be here too, but he's a little bit of a weird one. Shan Yun can be a compelling buffer, but Animo DPSing for like buffing Xiao is an option, obviously, and then you have buffing Varessa. But I'd say most of the time in Stygian Onslaught, you'd usually rather play a Varessa overload team than a Shan Yun team. Having to rely on Shan Yun's burst at the start is really a big downside for Shan Yun teams in Stygian. So I'm going to throw her in Abyss capable, and she also enables all the other weird plunge shenanigans. If you like doing plunge teams, Shan Yun is one of the main characters that enables you to just DPS any character in the game because she allows you to plunge. Even bow characters can technically do it, although I am personally not a fan of bow plunging. Chevreuse, straight into Stygian capable. Arguably, I think people have used Chevreuse teams every single Stygian. Chevreuse is a ridiculous character. I think she might be the strongest 4-star in the game if you ever C6 at least. And why is that? Well, that's because Stygian's important. Bennett has meaningful alternatives. There is plenty of Chevreuse teams, especially post-Durin release, that do not want or need Bennett or even Eonsun potentially, but also Eonsun is a potential alternative in Chevreuse teams very often that needing energy at the start for Bennett is really annoying. I think the vast majority of people's Bennetts are not, like, if you're struggling with Stygian, it might be because your Bennett does not have enough ER. I'm obviously going to put Bennett up here. We'll just put him up here, actually. It's Bennett, right? I don't expect Bennett to go anywhere, mind you, but I kind of feel that Chevreuse is the stronger character at this point in time. I could see them releasing a 5-star version of Bennett, replacing him sooner than they'd replace Chevreuse, personally. Navia, I think she's Abyss capable still. But it is, I think, a lot more of a struggle than it used to be. I think it's about as difficult to DPS Lanyon in most Abyss cycles as it is Navia. I haven't seen many people do much with Navia in Stygian. Navia's certainly not a bad character, right? But she is a circumstance, I think, of a character that, due to how they've been balancing newer DPSs, just struggles to be usable as much. Charlotte. Now, I kind of have a hot take with Charlotte in that I think Charlotte is one of the most compelling last slots in Skirk teams because Charlotte allows you to not have to burst every rotation on a Scofier, and Charlotte can use TDDS, but I think you need C4 Charlotte for it to be actually compelling, and she's still a pain in the ass to build. So I actually am going to put her in capable but takes effort tier. Realistically, for most people, she's probably here, but I'm comfortable putting her here. Risley. The thing that would make people mad is if I put him here because he can make Moika melt. No, I'm not doing that. I think I'm comfortable just leaving him in Abyss capable tier. It's not that hard, I think, to get him to be functional in Abyss. Farina. Farina is a character that is not in as many, meta best in slot teams anymore, which is interesting. But I think that's actually a good thing because she was just I think a universal character should not very often be best in slot, right? If they're going to be a more balanced character. She does Hydra without having to do, you know, any shenanigans. Fav is one of her best weapons anyways and is really good in Stygian. You know, it's not that hard to build her to get her to do something compelling. She's too universal to not be here, in my opinion. And I don't even think Columbina's release is going to push her out of here unless Columbina is just, you know, Farina Pro Max. But I suspect Columbina won't be that, but who knows? I don't know what her kit is. Mr. Nervylette. Would people kill me if I put him in Abyss capable? He's very versatile, right? Like if you have Lauma available for him, you have Durin potentially available for him in the future, you have a Nefa available for him, right? If you have the team options to give him different off-fielder teammates, that can allow him to fulfill different enemy mechanics. I don't really play him anymore because I got bored of him, but I haven't seen a lot of people doing anything with Stygian. Like, I think it almost seems like Hoyoverse has gone out of their way to make Nervylette not feel very good in Stygian, right? But inevitably when he reruns, there'll be something that's favorable to him. So I don't know, right? It puts him in a weird spot. I'm sure some people might disagree with this take because it's Nervylette. Everyone talks about him constantly, always still, but I don't actually think he's super Stygian capable. But I could be wrong. I don't go out of my way to try to make him work. I have a C0 Nervylette with a decent build available, and I have tried to use him in Stygian a few times and been like, nope, this is not enough. You can use him at lower difficulty Stygian, difficulty 4, obviously, probably yes, or farming, yes, duh. I guess I should have mentioned that earlier, that for many people, Stygian Onslaught is just like a farming gameplay mode. Fremine, I think he's more than capable to be used in Abyss, but I think he takes enough effort that I'm going to put him here. Kind of wondering if I didn't even need it this tier right now, by the way. I guess I should have put, like, these characters in this tier. You know what, we can just delete this tier for now. Lynette, she is free, which gives her compelling utility. She can be made to do some okay performance on field with her C6 and whatever. I know a lot of people like doing that. I think she is capable enough that I can put her in this category. Linny. I think Linny is a difficult to play character, and he might be really good in the next Stygian, but in a generic level, I think he's much more of an Abyss character. But his synergy with Durin, if you really like Linny, I think you should strongly consider pulling Durin, right? That is the valuable thing about how they have been balancing these new like off-fielders to be so strong, is that it does uplift a lot of older on-fielders, and I think you should strongly consider that, and that might be enough for you, depending on your investment in skills with Linny, to suddenly make Linny go from not Stygian capable to Stygian capable, but I'm going to place him here. Kiwawawa. Cats. Cats. I do like DPS Kirara a lot, but I think she falls in, you know, this category. Arlecchino. I maybe should have started with you first, since you were, you know, who I was originally going to make a video about in the first place. I think she's a very Stygian capable character. Now, I think it's worth discussing a little bit, though. She is capable enough in Stygian for me that on my main account, I can use her to clear dire difficulty. And that's why I'm relatively comfortable saying she is Stygian capable, especially because she is not very energy reliant, and she is also really good at, like, you know, generating particles that you can funnel to, say, Bennett to fuel his burst, to get his burst up right away, despite the no energy start in Stygian Onslaught. Like, I think she's more Stygian capable than Gaming is. And this is regardless of the current enemy that chills her so much that she can solo the enemy at difficulty 5 with a good build. And by the way, part of Arlecchino's strength is that she's very good at being able to have teams that can adapt. Muika, for example, is like has more of like a parasitic mechanic, is reliant on other Natlan characters. You know, Arlecchino just is a pyro DPS, and she can be swapped out in the middle of her rotation. And there's a lot of optimization you can have with that, with like enemy stall mechanics that are pretty much always present in Stygian, and Abyss, realistically, you know, it's present everywhere. Yay for stall mechanics. But like, Arlecchino is just extremely capable. I think even at C0, but how exactly capable for you will depend on your account, right? If you were running a casual account where you log in, you know, for a couple weeks out of every couple patches, then she's probably not, right? But then she's probably here, technically, because all characters would be here for most casual accounts. So I'm comfortable putting here. Kaveh obviously is a Stygian capable character. Why? Because Lauma, no. I mean, technically you could use Kaveh. It would like Nilu Lauma teams, you know, in some Stygian onslaughts in like the previous Stygian, but that does not put him here. In fact, I don't even think it puts him in Abyss capable, because I think, you know, again, it's just that they're buffing Bloom specifically right now, so Kaveh is more usable, but he still doesn't feel that good, even with the Bloom buffs. I like Kaveh a lot, but I think he takes a lot of effort to make work. Baiju. Still a compelling unit to pair with Farina. He needs energy. You can get a C1 now, though, for free from the thing, which helps with his energy. He has a big team-wide heal on his skill activation, then provides a shield and more healing with his burst. So, you know, I'm going to just throw him in Abyss capable. It's fine. Meekers. I actually think he's Abyss capable. I think his synergy with Freyna is strong enough. Like, he is more compelling as a healer to build for Freyna than Charlotte is at C0, right? And his attack speed and physical buffing gimmick, like depending on his constellation level you have, could enable you to do some enjoyable teams, like say physical Zhongli can work pretty well in Abyss. And you know, I think he's actually an interesting character, and he doesn't take that much effort to be useful. He's just reliant on, you know, having a character that most other people have, I think, to be useful on some level. Oh boy, it's my Dia. So I think some people might say I'm biased to put her in here, and I would agree. I'm not gonna put her there. I do be clear. I still haven't made a video out about it because I wanted to use multiple Stygians, but then like I'm gonna have a video coming eventually with using Dia in multiple Stygian onslaughts at dire difficulty. It's weird. It's a showing, I think, of the problems with dire difficulties design, but also that, you know, Dia can be a more usable character than you might expect. Fundamentally, Dia, I think, is actually a very capable character, particularly from a level of she has a lot of off-field utility. Off-field pyro application value is dependent on, I think, how much you care about her defensive utility for keeping your team alive. I think people underestimate how much a like well-built, not even well-built, sorry, just a leveled up like level 90 Dia, how well she can keep your team alive. And like so many people are like, I really like interruption resistance. I really like shields. Well, Dia provides you interruption resistance. It's only partial uptime, but she can do a useful element off-field and provide interruption resistance. And in Abyss context, that can kind of just be really valuable. And I think she's one of my favorite characters to play for just like a comfort character, because it's impossible to die on her when you build her as a DPS and have, you know, other okay units paired with her. One of my favorite Dia teams is Dia, Chevreuse, Yai, and Eonson, right? Yai is conceived as a bad character too, but it's a very comfortable and compelling team to play. I've used it in many an Abyss cycle with C3 Dia. The point is that I have experienced the full spread of like C0 over 2 years. I experienced the growth of C0 to C6 level 100. It's been a very satisfying journey trying to get her to work, and I wouldn't recommend you use her in Stygian. Unless you just need her as a generic, she's your only off-field pyro option, but nowadays you probably have more compelling options for off-field pyro in Stygian Onslaught. I think I'm comfortable putting her in Abyss capable tier. For a lot of people, you might think she should be in the capable takes effort tier, but I don't know. I don't think she takes any more effort than most units do in this list, for example, so I'm comfortable putting her there. Yao Yao. I think Yao Yao is one of the most valuable characters to have at C0 for a 4-star. She's just a really nice healer, and she applies some Dendro. I don't think she's like a super compelling unit for Stygian, but most of the time I think she's going to be more compelling in Abyss. And also, as far as DPS Yao Yao goes, I think I'm going to make a DPS Yao Yao video properly, finally. Anyways, you can look forward to that eventually. DPS Yao Yao is probably going to be better than you expect. Oh, Mr. Al-Haytham. Hello, Overworld. No, sorry, I'm joking. He's perfectly capable in Abyss. I don't think he... Well, I don't know. He again is a unit that I think could be fairly compelling in Stygian, since he, you know, can start doing damage right away. I think spread DPSing is just not quite there. I feel like Al-Haytham is a character that needs a quickened version of Chevreuse to release, and I hope they're a 4-star, not 5-star. I feel like he's a less enjoyable Tignari, personally. Sorry. That's just my personal preference. I'm comfortable placing him in Abyss capable, though. Anyways, so Farazan is a really, really good buffer at C6. She's such a good buffer at C6 that I would say she should be Stygian Onslaught capable, except for every single Stygian Onslaught so far has been pretty anti-Animo DPS. I suspect with the Venti buffs next patch, you know, we should get a Stygian Onslaught where Farazan's going to be a much more compelling unit. But that's just one Stygian Onslaught, and because of the fact that we haven't seen many Onslaughts that have actually been compelling for Animo DPSing, I don't think Farazan's actually that good of a Stygian character, and I do think she's extremely valuable to have if you want to do any Animo DPSing. I think she's very valuable to have if you want to do Shao. I do appreciate that, you know, Durin can do Animo Red Shred, so we feel less reliant on Farazan C6 than we had before. Depending on the Stygian Onslaught, she might be in here, but I would say, generally speaking, I'd place her here. Oh, Wanderer. If there's any that I might get smited for, I think it might be this one. Amusingly, I think Wanderer is more reliant on C6 Farazan than Lanyan DPS is. So, I don't know, you know, you have permission to smash that dislike button. for putting Wanderer here. I don't think it's that hard to use him, but I think I think he takes equivalent effort to many of these characters to use him in the current day, unfortunately. I guess you could argue it's similar to Risley maybe, but I don't know. I don't feel that comfortable putting him in this tier. I'm sorry. Layla. I mean, when that cryo boss is in Abyss, Layla's a very competent character for Abyss because she on her own fulfills the cryo application requirement for that enemy's mechanic. But that's one specific enemy that Layla's really good for. I think on a generic level, Layla's not that good other than just as a shielder. But like, it's not that she takes effort, I guess. So you know what, actually, I'm sorry. I think Layla's the second overworld character. And overworld shouldn't have the issues where, you know, if her shield breaks, her whole kit turns off, like you stop generating energy, and whatever, right? I guess you could argue, though, that Escoffier's Skirk teams existing and, you know, having a shielder for Calamity of Eshu enabling puts her higher. But that's specifically for Skirk, and that's more just Skirk things, in my opinion, rather than her things. Now, Nahida, and honestly, she's still pretty good in Stygian if you need Dendro, but I don't know if I put her in Stygian. I haven't used her that much in Stygian. I really haven't. She's been usable, but I don't know. I think if you put Prototype Amber on her, Stygian character. No, it's mostly a joke. Because turning Nahida into a healer is really nice. I'm just going to throw her in Abyss. Nilu is, again, someone who got significantly uplifted by Llama. But like, it feels like it's Llama doing the work, not Nilu per se as much to me. So I'm not really that comfortable putting her in a Stygian tier at this moment in time. Because as soon as they have Stygians that they don't want to, you know, have Llama Nilu teams be usable in, she just won't feel that usable, I think. But maybe that won't happen anytime soon because of Llama's release. I don't know, right? It's just, I hate how much the discussion of Nilu right now is like conditional on like whether you have Llama. I think that feels bad. I don't like how Llama was balanced as a character. Personally, like, does the existence of a new character like give her the right to be here? I guess, but it's like, it's just like, it feels like I'm just putting Llama here, not I'm putting Nilu here, right? But fine, whatever. I'll put you there because I don't know. I don't know. Candace, no. I think she's capable, but takes effort. I need to do a revisit of the Candace Dia video. I've been intending to do that, but I keep forgetting. Mr. Sino. Oh boy. Mr. Sino, I think, is screwed over by Stygian, but he also can work better than he used to nowadays with, again, recent off-fielder releases. This is a similar story with many characters. It means that, like, Sino can still be very usable. Easy to get usable. Actually, you know what? No, if I'm putting Wanderer down in this tier, Sino is definitely in this tier. I think, in some ways, Sino might be harder to make utility of than Wanderer. So, you know what? Sorry, Sino. Dory. Would people be annoyed if I put Dory higher than Sino and Wanderer? I kind of feel that C6 Dory is a better character than Sino and Wanderer. I put Yao Yao here, yo. I did put Risley here. I'm putting Dory here. You can't stop me. Kale. Kale's been really good lately because of the like Bloom boss mechanics. I undervalued Kale in like a video I made a while back about ranking 4 stars at C0. I'll up rank her this time. As an apology to ranking her definitely too low in the past. Tignari. I think he's a very Abyss capable boy. I don't think there's much need to have about that. He's pretty decent still. And I think the release of Ino has helped him have actually more team options at lower investment levels that feel pretty good. You do Kuki plus an electric unit like, say, Fischl. Anyways, I think he's a perfectly Abyss capable unit, but he's not easy, particularly in the current Abyss cycle, so I don't know. Maybe he's a takes effort character at this point. Is he the same amount of takes effort as Sino Wanderer? Maybe I might just be biased towards feeling like Tignari's more usable than he is because of the investment I have into Yai and the synergy that Yai and Tignari have as like a quick swappy team. Speaking of, actually, I don't know. If I try to remove my bias for Yai, where do I place Yai? I'll put Tignari at the top of takes effort tier and Yai alongside Dia because I like playing Yai and Dia together. That's my justification. You can't stop me. But I would absolutely understand you arguing to put her in the capable but takes effort tier. Hazo, I think, is the capable but takes effort tier. I think he's not too dissimilar of an animo DPS fundamentally than Wanderer. Easier to build to the point of being comfortable playing him compared to Wanderer. I think I actively feel Wanderer's aerial gameplay with him getting interrupted and screwed over is a really, really big problem. Kuki Shinobu. Now, Bloom teams are good in Stygian. I haven't seen how many people are doing like fearless difficulty clears with Hyper Bloom Kuki. So Kuki's in a weird spot where I'm not really sure where she's at. You know what? Let me know in the comments if there's actually nobody that has ever actually done any clear relevant with Kuki in Stygian. But I think she's good enough in Stygian. She can start her Electro application right away. Yelan. You know, Yelan's weird in that, like, I feel like the new options we have for Hydra units means she doesn't show up very often. She's similar to Freenet. She doesn't show up very often in characters' best teams, but then she has the downside of requiring normal attacks. Like, I actually think she's probably worse than Sing-Cho in Stygian, but she is still capable in Stygian. I don't know. She's a weird one. You have to build a lot more energy for her, though, in that mode as well, and that makes her, like, do a lot less damage. I don't know. She's a weird one. She's a hard one to place again, I feel like. I'm going to keep her in Abyss capable tier, but obviously you can find team use cases where she can be good in Stygian. I could absolutely be convinced to put her in Stygian. Ayato. I'm going to put him in the takes effort tier. You have Escoffier teams, but I don't even think... Well, are Escoffier Farina teams comfortably clearing Stygians with Ayato very often? I assume not. I'm sorry. He does have some fun off-field utility, which is interesting, but I think that is equivalent of a take effort thing since he has to be built with a bunch of energy for it. Anyways, Yunjin. I like Yunjin. I think she's realistically not very often super usable. She used to be like a compelling enough unit that I'd say she just her normal attack buff alone allowed you to like potentially uplift your damage enough to make it not that difficult to do insane things like this. This is more insane than it used to be a year and a half ago. In the current context of how they have balanced Abyss now, like post Nod Cry, I kind of think she's not even that usable with effort most of the time, unfortunately. Shenhe, of course, has been uplifted with the Scofia's release, so I'm relatively comfortable putting her in Abyss. I think she's always been like a decent character, just she lacks in having that many compelling units to be paired with. But Escoffier, Skirk Synergy, any future cryo units, hopefully, I think she's a good enough unit to put into Abyss capable. I don't think her utility in Skirk teams is relevant enough, personally, to throw her in Stygian capable, especially with, you know, the no energy start in Stygian. Although you can get her C1 for free now, which makes her get more energy at the start. But I also, having a C0 Shenhe, I'm not really that inclined to choose her C1 personally, so... is a dog. I think if you're playing Ito nowadays, which is the main context where like you'd use like a C6 Goro, like you probably play Ito with, you know, some mix of Farina Shilonin or whatever. I don't know. Well, yep. I think I just sent Ito to the Shadow Realm. Am I blind? Oh, I did. Oops, I Shadow Realmed him to the Youngins. I see. Capable, but takes effort. Yep, I think he can be conjoined with. Yep. Toma Burgeon is better now that Lauma exists, but also more importantly that they reduce the self damage from Burgeon. I'm comfortable placing him in Abyss capable as a unit with off-field pyro utility, defensive utility, and has, you know, nuance with Burgeon. He's definitely not, you know, Kuki level, I think, but I'm comfortable putting him Abyss capable tier. Aloy is not a Genshin character. I'm just gonna throw her here. I don't feel like talking about her. I wish I had her, and maybe I would if I had her. You could argue Aloy should be in the capable but takes effort tier. Kokomi can be compelling in a number of contexts still, you know, a comfort character and otherwise, but, you know, Hydro good, Abyss capable. Yep. Sara is capable, but it takes, I don't know. Well, I don't like Sara. I think Eonson, in particular me having Eonson C6, has replaced pretty much any context I would even care about using Sara. But I think she is capable, and you can do like fun DPSing with her. She can buff herself, right? So I'll put her in the capable, but takes effort tier. Raiden. Raiden is the character I was mentioning before when it comes to Stygian Onslaught attempts. I am trying to do a dire difficulty clear with Stygian Onslaught on polearms only with Raiden in a Shevers team. And it's a high investment Raiden, mind you, but we're talking dire difficulty. Raiden is, I think, one of the characters that's screwed over the most by the no energy start in Stygian. The fact that Hyperbloom Raiden exists, though, I think does justify her being a Stygian capable character. Like, if I have Kuki here, Raiden should absolutely be here. There's no reason she shouldn't be. But even Crit Raiden, I think, is actually surprisingly been capable in some Stygians, but, like, not really. I want to be clear. Like, she's so difficult to try to use. Like a Raiden in Stygian Onslaught is a capable technically, but takes effort, and it's just a pain in the arse. And I think if you don't have Engulfing Lightning, it's a nightmare. So, like, you know, the only reason she's here is Hyper Bloom, and that is what it is. But, you know, I think it's worth discussing crit DPS Raiden for Stygian because it is possible. If you're really dedicated to Raiden, it is possible to get utility out of crit DPS Raiden. Sayu shenanigans used to be more usable, I think, than they are now. Again, like, things like the Wild Hunt enemy design really screws with team options a lot. So I'm going to throw her in the capable but takes effort tier. And similarly, I think Yoimiya is a DPS. Well, no, I think Yoimiya still has... she's a pyro DPS. That's why she has an advantage. Like, she can work in Chever's teams. I don't know. Like, post Durin release, if you have Durin for her, I think you could argue she is solidly Abyss capable or Stygian tier, but that's on the contingency of one character. I guess it's a similar story to Nilu, though, isn't it? But Durin for Yoimiya also means you're probably not doing, like... Well, maybe... Can you do Vaporize Yoimiya with Durin? I don't know. It's like the same justification for Nilu being here, but, like, maybe she shouldn't be there because of Llama. Maybe you shouldn't be here because of Durin. I don't know. I'll throw her here. We gotta throw someone a bone. Just like we're gonna throw Ayaka here because the Scofier exists now, quite frankly, right? I think that's fine. I also think people underestimate the utility of being able to play Ayaka with Virgin shenanigans. So it's with doing C6 Bennett in particular. So you can do like self-melt, Virgin melts, and Cryo is actually one of the main things that can actually help reduce the burning aura so you can get more consistent Virgins. But Farina, Nahida, Bennett, C6, Ayaka actually works pretty well. Kazuma, he's still a good unit, but also I'm now realizing I don't know if I have once bothered trying to use him in Stygian. It's not that I wouldn't be able to use him, it's just I don't need to. I don't know, and I feel like Kazuha's ideal is Abyss when he can group enemies. Kazuha is still fun to use, and he's really, really great in Overworld too. The Kazuha is not anywhere near as important as he used to be years ago, but he's still a very Abyss capable unit that I'm obviously comfortable putting him there. And user license agreement. I think, I did put Dia in Abyss capable tier. So I have a moderator of mine, hello Sylveon, that has done some really, really impressive stuff with a really crazily good Eula build, to be clear. She was using Farina with, I think, Mika and a Raiden on Exiles, like that's 4-star artifacts, because that reduces Farina's ER needs to make Farina do way more damage with a Eula team. And that has allowed Sylveon to clear even the really difficult, like 80k DPS non-cry cycles, which is impressive. But I would say that puts her in the she takes a ton of effort tier, personally. But you could argue that she could be Abyss capable still. Yanfei, I don't know, the Duran Chever's official team core is like really valuable, but also I think boring. But also any on-fielder that can be paired in that team core, which is any Electro or Pyro on-fielder, you could argue is now much better because of that exists. I don't know. Frick. Oh dear, I'm just gonna put her here, sorry. Rosaria, as an off-fielder, she is like the budget melt enabler. I think after Seat Lolly's release this year, everyone realized that Rosaria was better than most people gave her credit for, but awkward to use is the main thing I'd describe about her. So, I don't know, I really like her in conjunction with Seat Lolly for doing, let's say, like double Cryo, Arlecchino, Bennett. I haven't used her very much in Stygian though, but you could use her in Stygian too in some team contexts. I could definitely see it. You know, I'm comfortable leaving her in this tier. Hu Chao, I think is still an Abyss capable unit, but I also... okay, she's almost... speaking from experience of trying to use her in my Polar Money account, which doesn't have like vaporized teams available, mind you, she's almost kind of edging on this tier. Xiao. Well, Xiao can definitely be a compelling Anemo DPS, and he has a decent bit of extra team options, and Duran will uplift his team options too. I do not think he has the same problems Wanderer has, and he has a higher baseline damage potential. Ganyu. I don't know. So, like, I know Ayaka's here because, like, a Scofier existing, but, like, I don't like Ganyu with Scofier teams, right? That's my qualm. But she also has Melt available, and Melt Ganyu is tricksy to make work. And we're talking about Duran again. Duran affects team building a lot in this game. You can look forward to a Duran video where I probably go more in depth on things, but he's so versatile, and like I think he will be a very compelling unit for Melt Ganyu. So you know what? I think Duran's existence is enough to let me comfortably bump up Ganyu. We already have Risley here anyway, so that's fine. Albedo. Post-buff Albedo is, I think, just pretty good. and it doesn't have like the team building restrictions that Chiori has to get his damage out, and does more damage than Chiori and buffs a little bit. So yeah, should be a very Abyss capable unit. He might end up being more Stygian capable than I expect to. I don't know. I haven't used a buffed Albedo. I haven't thought a ton about his teams. I'm going to put him in comfortably Abyss tier post buff. I think he should be really easy to make use of. Almost more easy than Zhongli. I guess, fine, we'll skip Xin Yan for a second. I mean, is Zhongli. You could argue his Stygian Onslaught tier. Because as long as you, like, Zhongli will oftentimes lower your functional damage output, but the fact that he just gives a comfortable shield that and buffs a little bit while allowing you to not have to worry about staying alive, I suspect means a lot of people are using Zhongli and Stygian. I mean, I did put Kuki in this tier. You know what? No, I am comfortable putting him here because I have used him a bunch on my Polearm only account in Stygian Onslaught, right? And I have cleared every single Fearless difficulty on a Polearm only account. And Zhongli has helped with team options for that. So I am actually comfortable putting him in Stygian capable. Xin Yan, I think, hello Overworld, my old friend. You can make her usable in interesting ways, but, you know, I think she doesn't have the greatest kit, you know. Diana has her C6 200 EM buff. Then she forces long rotations, which isn't ideal. I don't think she's an Overworld restrictive unit. Like, she's good enough to be useful elsewhere. I do think she's quite a bit better than Layla, so I'll throw her here. You're going to have the right team that makes her make sense to use in. Child's a weird one. I am not able to properly evaluate. Every time I've tried to use him, he feels terrible. Like, he feels worse than Wanderer to me. Maybe, well, okay, you know what? Maybe Child National is still strong enough to do this, but I don't know. I've played Child National and I did not like. So there's got to be some personal bias here. I apologize. Klee, I mean, pose buff. She's probably a Stygian Onslaught capable character on the backs of, you know, Chever's teams, of course. I actually don't think she'll be as good as Arlecchino because she doesn't have the ability to, like, do melt teams, for example. I mean, if Gaming is here, then, you know, definitely Klee should be here, so I'm fine with that. And Klee C1 being able to be gotten for free and uplifting your damage significantly. Klee is a compelling alternative to any other Pyro DPS. Venti might end up in a similar level, but I'm going to put him in Abyss capable rather than Stygian capable because despite the fact that I assume he'll be good next Stygian, we just have not seen Stygians that are very friendly to Animo DPSing in general, is my experience so far. Speaking from trying to do everything I can to make DPS Lanyan work, and I've also tried Shao in a few Stygians. Maybe post-Venti release, they'll do more Stygians that actually are going to make him really usable, and maybe I'm underestimating what his total damage potential is, because maybe he is twice as good as Shao. I assume not. But, you know, if he's only, like, as good as Shao, or a little bit better than Shao, similar to DPS Lanyan, whatever, right? I don't really think that fundamentally changes much. But honestly, though, like, the buffs make him, like, I think he was more here or here before, quite frankly, because there was just too rarely situations that made use of the one unique thing he did with his grouping. But now that he has his grouping gimmick and the damage he can deal, I think he is solidly a Abyss character. Xingqiu. He's a Hydro boy. Hydro pretty good. I think we have a biased representation of Xingqiu for recent Stygian onslaughts because of the boss mechanics. I don't know. I think again, I put Hyperbloom characters here. Well, it has been good for the last two. Maybe I even shouldn't have put those characters here. I don't know. It's hard to evaluate Stygian. Stygian's whack, right? Okay, I'm sorry. This tier is the tier that's like a vague tier of characters that are a tier above for reaching DPS thresholds and having team flexibility that makes them more likely, in my mind, to be usable in Stygian. It does not guarantee they'll be always usable in Stygian. Right. Chungus. I actually think Chongyun is pretty good with the cooldown reduction that you can utilize. The only problem is I think cooldown reduction is oftentimes not useful when you end up having to wait out timings of things for like enemy mechanics. He can be pretty Abyss capable, but I think he requires some effort. It's Xiangling. It's Pyro. A lot of times Pyro and has been exactly what you need in Stygian, or just boss mechanics in general. Great for Abyss. She's probably going to continue being good for Stygian. If you get Durin, you'll probably have less need to use her, but most likely she's still going to have cases where you'll use her over Durin because she does more Pyro application. She can break shields faster. But she does have problems in Stygian of like really, really high energy cost, and so it's annoying as hell to get her to the point of being functional in Stygian. But that's still, she is very Stygian capable. It's Xiangling. She's broken. Keqing. I think at this point, Kaching is a capable but takes effort character because Aggravate Kaching isn't as good as it is used to be relative to how they've been balancing Abyss and enemy cycles and whatever. Like, Aggravate in general just isn't as good anymore, right? Beidou, I don't know. She's like valuable in AoE, but AoE scenarios aren't as common anymore. So I don't know. I'm just gonna leave her in this tier. I think it's fine. Ningguang, she has better multiplier output than I think people give her credit for, but she doesn't have as compelling of buffers by being a geo unit that's attack scaling. So, you know, I think she's an interesting character, but I also don't think it's that hard to make use of her. I certainly don't think she belongs here. Razor, I mean, post buff, if you have C6 4-star supports, you could argue maybe he deserves Stygian. I somewhat suspect due to energy reliance on teams, he is more going to be a very competent Abyss character for most people now, where he wasn't before, even though he was actually pretty Abyss capable before in certain weird like reaction shenanigan contexts. Like, Razor was a cool character before, and now his kit is just being uplifted to a degree where he's a cool character that scales. Scales to the potential where you could consider him a Stygian, but remains to be seen exactly. I'm more comfortable placing him here, post-buff. D-Luke, he's a Pyro DPS. I think he can be made to be pretty easy to use in Abyss. I wish Kaya with the Scofier was a more relevant synergy. I think Kaya you have to go out of your way, I think, and put effort into making Kaya usable, and I think you kind of need his C6 for him to shine. He's the fastest cryo application in the game if you have a C6. Mona, post-buff, I think will be a Stygian capable character. I think she will compete with Frina. Her energy needs are going to be rough, potentially. So it's going to depend on her constellation level, by the way. Like, if you have particularly constellation 4 Mona, she's much better. So it depends a little bit, but standard banner characters existed for a while. If you played the game for a while, you can also choose her in the selector. You know, I think I'm comfortable putting her here, but maybe we'll be wrong. She's the one buff character I am comfortable putting there right now. Well, sorry. I forgot. She is the second buff character. It's Fischl. Fischl already, I think, showed up relatively often in Stygian, and she's going to show up more. Yep. You need to do double Hex and Circle, so like with Sucrose, with Mona, with Durin, and then she will do a 45% attack buff with Overload being triggered, or 180 EM with C6 to the on-fielder and herself, with Electrocharge being triggered, and you can get both in the same team if you have both reactions happening. Yeah, Fischl's going to be real strong. She was already real strong. Now she's going to be real strong. Sucrose, same thing. She's just like the best Animo buffer in the game. And they're buffing her minorly. That buffs don't really matter that much for her, but it does make her better. Barbara. I think Barbara's a better character than many people give her credit for, but she has obvious problems. I'm going to put her in Abyss capable. Noelle, I think, is capable, but takes effort. She used to be more capable in the past, but I think it's harder to use Noelle now enough to put her in this tier. Amber, I think, while there are, you know, impressive people like Furu that do amazing Amber clears, I think Amber takes a lot of effort to get to the point, so I will put her there. Lisa, I think, is the same. And by the way, both these characters, I would say, they're like Kaya, make you want constellations for them to be properly usable. Some people are going to probably say Jean should be in Stygian capable because of the cheese with the Fatui operative being possible. And if there continues to be enemies where we can fall damage cheese them, and I think it's cool that that tech is available, right? It's not simple to do, but people have been finding ways to make it easier to do with different combinations of characters. Like the reason I put Zhongli here was not because of that tech, right? I put Zhongli here for other reasons. And I don't know, Jean with her like Farina synergy alone, I don't think is enough to put her in Stygian capable. But it remains to be seen long term. If they continue making enemies like the Fatui operative that can be, you know, dealt with fall damage, then I'd say Jean actually is Stygian capable. If not, then she's ranked lower. So she is ranked between, dependent on future contexts. I don't know, because I don't know the future. But you know what? I like Jean. I'll leave her there. Why not? And then it's something you can comment about and be mad about. And the Travelers. I'm not going to put every single Travelers, but I think all of the Travelers, that's my whole list. So I don't know. Jump into the comments. Let me know if you agree, disagree. This is probably a long video. I'll take a screenshot of this ramp. In case it's not obvious, the whole point of this video was to illustrate, you know, the fact that I am very confident about like the placement of most of those things, in that the characters that I put that are capable, right, they're all capable. There's very few characters I don't think could be made to make work in endgame context, right? There's only 6 I put that I think would be a struggle for me to try to make work in a way where I feel like they're doing something truly relevant to the team. And you could even think of some context where they could do something, like there's machine gun Goro tech and there's whatever, right? You get the point. Like I can think of actually some things where it does seem like that character is actually working in a way with how the game's mechanics works and the team's mechanics for how they interface together. Like that's the fun of Genshin's team building to me. That's why I'm making this video. This idea to me of what you can do to just use the characters you want to use is my way of engaging with Genshin's meta, right? Like many people engage with the meta in the way of, you know, you just play the best teams available and you trivialize the content by playing Moika, Bennett, Sealali, Shilonen, and you get good at doing Moika mount combos, and if that's what's fun to you about the game, that's awesome, right? Find your own enjoyment for the game. That's not what I enjoy about the game. I enjoy the nuance of what can you do to make things work, and I stand by this generic list for all the older characters. And also, I don't know, it's just funny to make a tier list where all the new characters are on the bottom garbage.